We're ready. Good morning, everyone. This committee on the Special Committee on Gun Violence is called to order. Today is Tuesday, September the 8th of 2020. I understand that state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearings notices that are published in the Daily News, Enquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Will the clerk please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate they are present when their names are called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on the screen when you speak. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Gautier.
Wait, what? No.
Present. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Councilmember Thomas.
Present. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for convening this important conversation.
Mr. Chair, I believe that's all members present.
This is the public hearing of the Special Committee on Gun Violence regarding Resolution 170609. The clerk please read the title of the resolution.
Resolution 170609, authorizing the creation of a special committee on gun violence prevention to address Philadelphia's enduring plague of gun violence by facilitating coordination among stakeholders and formulating a comprehensive gun violence prevention strategy.
Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have or witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Before the clerk call our next witness, this is a follow-up to the meeting that we hosted last week, addressing the issue of gun violence, particularly with our district attorney, Larry Crafton, our police commissioner, Daniel Outlaw, with a specific focus on the trafficking and flow of illegal guns, gun crimes, and taking a look at how we're addressing the issue of illegal guns here in the city of Philadelphia. That includes how they are prosecuted, how those who carry and use guns are arrested. The conversation today revolves around our bail system, looking at how individuals receive bail or denied bail as it relates to carrying and the possession of guns, and also a presentation around our gun violence task force sponsored by our Attorney General's office, and how we are tracking down the flow of illegal guns here in the city of Philadelphia. At this time, I'm going to ask for Joshua Harris to please call the first witness.
Brendan O'Malley, Chief Deputy Attorney General, Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office.
Good morning, Chair Johnson and members of Philadelphia City Council. My name is Brendan O'Malley. I'm a Chief Deputy Attorney General, and today I'm representing the Office of Attorney General Josh Shapiro. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today regarding gun trafficking in Pennsylvania. As most of you know, the Gun Violence Task Force is funded by the state legislature. It is a joint state and local effort that investigates the origins of crime guns in the city and also targets violent criminal organizations at the request of the Philadelphia Police Department. It was created in 2007 to assist the city in fighting violent crime. Our mission is to investigate and prosecute those who illegally purchase and transfer firearms in the city. The Office of Attorney General employs 18 state agents that are embedded in the 6 Philadelphia Police Detective Divisions across the city. They review each gun recovered in the city and investigate possible straw purchases and illegal transfers. If they make an arrest, in most instances, those cases are prosecuted by the district attorney's office. Several gun violence agents are deputized with federal agencies like the FBI and United States Marshals and work on violent crimes task forces. In those capacities, they often arrest violent offenders in possession of firearms, and their cases are usually prosecuted in federal court. Our prosecutors are also deputized as special assistant U.S. attorneys so they can adopt cases in federal court, which brings enhanced penalties and increased public safety. Pursuant to a federal grant, we also have 2 deputy attorney generals assigned to the Violent Crimes Unit of the U.S. Attorney's Office, and in the first quarter of this year, they federally adopted 13 city firearms prosecutions. In addition to agents and prosecutors, just last month, we added intelligence analysts to not only assist our agents in investigations, but to help provide a more complete picture of the origin of crime guns in the Commonwealth. There are severe federal restrictions in data sharing and state law restrictions as well, but we believe it is important to compile and share information where possible that can have the public and policymakers make informed decisions regarding illegal gun possession in Pennsylvania. In general, as city violent crime cases face minimal public cooperation, our analysts can use new technology in analyzing cell phone records, open source social media to achieve results in the absence of witness testimony. As we have limited resources, our agents and analysts will assist in ensuring high-value targets are investigated thoroughly to stop gun pipelines. We seek to have maximum impact for our investigations given our limited number of agents. Our office in 2018 launched the Kensington Initiative, which targets with precision intelligence violent drug trafficking groups that are responsible for extreme amounts of violence that surround their drug operations. The target areas are generated using opioid overdose data because drug trafficking causes a massive amount of violence in our neighborhoods. 2 weeks ago, our agents, along with Philadelphia police, seized 20 firearms and 23,000 doses of fentanyl while dismantling 3 drug trafficking operations. This group was responsible for numerous shootings, and some of the weapons recovered during the 35 arrests were semi-automatic rifles and shotguns. The Kensington Initiative is an example of using our resources in a targeted fashion to have a high impact on violent crime in city neighborhoods. These targeted complex operations are covert in nature, so surrounding communities do not bear the burden of feeling over-policed, but they reap the benefit of safer neighborhoods. Outside of the city, in a separately funded initiative, the Office of Attorney General used a blueprint created by GVTF to assist in the investigation of crime guns in the other 66 counties of the Commonwealth. Because we know crime guns don't respect county borders, our statewide agents work closely with the Philadelphia GVTF to trace guns across county lines. Our agents often find connections between Philadelphia and cities across the state like Carlisle, Wilkes-Barre, and Williamsport. Just last month, an investigation revealed a source obtaining guns from Kensington and selling them on the streets of Wilkes-Barre. And earlier this summer, during a GVTF drug and gun arrest, a man was arrested with a firearm purchased in York. Our statewide agents were able to track down the purchaser, and she confessed to providing the gun to the drug dealer that was arrested in Philadelphia. I've been asked to speak about historical data as it relates to gun recoveries and other activity by the Gun Violence Task Force. As we all know, COVID had a dramatic temporary impact on all of us. City services, businesses, schools, But as our Kensington initiative showed, our agents have adapted to the challenge and are back working the streets. GVTF was able to limit health risks for the public, and we are on pace to recover approximately 200 firearms this year. GVTF traditionally averaged between 135 to 170 gun recoveries in the city in a year. In 2018, that number increased to 184, and in 2019, agents recovered 233 firearms. So far this year, despite the pandemic, our agents have recovered 144 guns through August. Gun Violence Task Force also increased the amount of cases it has opened from 384 the year before Attorney General Shapiro took office to 641 cases open in 2019. Finally, Gun Violence Task Force arrests for crimes like illegal transfer of a firearm and lying on a gun purchase background check increased from 101 to 2017 to 115 in 2018 to 216 in 2019. These increases are due to new leadership in our agency, increased supports for the agents, and an emphasis on collaborating with our law enforcement partners, including the ATF and the Philadelphia Police Department. We work closely with deputy commissioners and chief inspectors to identify violent organizations that are appropriate for state resources to investigate and prosecute. In 2019, Police Commissioner Outlaw talked about guns recovered in 2020. You've asked about 2019. 4,288 firearms were recovered in Philadelphia. 55% of guns recovered in Philadelphia in 2019 were purchased in Pennsylvania. That percentage tracks closely with the larger picture of trafficking in the state, as approximately 58% of all guns recovered in Pennsylvania were purchased in Pennsylvania. So that means Pennsylvania is the number one source state for guns recovered in Pennsylvania, meaning the majority of crime guns originate intra-state, not from outside of state borders. Philadelphia is home to 12 gun dealers, and in 2019, 27% of all crime guns recovered in Philadelphia were purchased in the city. Our investigations reveal that most straw purchasers are in social networks with the gun traffickers that pay for the firearms. Relatives, criminal associates, neighborhood connections all contribute to the straw purchase epidemic and violence in our streets. Our agents closely analyze the time to crime, time to recovery, spatial relationship between the buyer and possessor, and other factors to determine if an investigation can yield a prosecutable case. I want to talk a little bit about the collar counties and other guns originating in Philadelphia. 17% of crime guns recovered in Philadelphia were purchased in Delaware, Bucks, and Montgomery County. As we continue to expand our collaboration with police departments and prosecutors in the Southeast, we hope to increase cross-county gun trafficking investigations and prosecutions and lead to a clearer picture of how guns travel in the city. We do not have a significant amount of firearms originating from outside the Commonwealth. Instead, most crime guns are regional in their origins. I want to speak briefly on databases and crime gun information because it's extremely complicated. Unfortunately, due to a lack of federal leadership on this issue, there is no federal searchable database of gun sales in this country. Gun sale paper forms stay at the dealer once a gun is purchased and are only recovered by ATF agents once a gun is recovered and the National Tracing Center contacts the manufacturer and distributor of the recovered crime gun. So essentially what that means is we are relying on a paper form system for federal crime gun information. These forms only track the first retail purchase. They do not track subsequent legal transfers, and this severely hampers investigations into firearm trafficking. Once a crime gun is recovered, it can be entered into a searchable database, which is called the eTrace system. As stated previously, eTrace will track the first retail purchase, but it can reveal a treasure trove of information on the buyer and other crime gun recoveries. eTrace is only effective if recovering agencies enter the crime gun information into the database and participate in data sharing. If agencies don't participate in data sharing, they will be limited to only guns recovered in their jurisdiction, which, as we know, will not be effective in seeing crime guns that cross county lines. Pennsylvania does have a searchable database of gun sale information. However, due to paper forms, there is a 13-month backlog in accessing the gun purchasing information in those entries. So two different systems. There's a federal system and a state system. The state system is more robust. We can track subsequent legal transfers. However, those databases don't talk to each other. We need analysts that we recently brought on board to manually overlay the data from the federal eTrace database to the Pennsylvania Record of Sale database to give a more complete picture of the origin of these weapons. These disparate databases, without the capability to provide real-time information, led the Attorney General to create the Track and Trace Initiative in 2019. In summary, Track and Trace encourages local law enforcement to enter their recovered crime guns into the ATF's eTrace system, participate in collective data sharing, and also encourage gun dealers in Pennsylvania to use electronic forms to reduce and eliminate the 13-month paper backlog of the Pennsylvania State Police. Due to our efforts, the number of gun purchases being run through electronic records by gun dealers has increased 600%. The number of law enforcement agencies sharing crime gun data through eTrace has increased 68%. And the number of eTrace reports now accessible through data sharing has increased 824%. This is important because there was data that we just couldn't see before. But now that we've onboarded major agencies like the Philadelphia Police Department and the Pittsburgh Police Department, it gives us a better sense of gun trafficking in Pennsylvania. In addition, the Pennsylvania Gun Trafficking Analytics Platform, available on our website at attorneygeneral.gov, now shows aggregate gun trace data in a searchable format based on eTrace data that can be shared publicly. This is an important resource, and I encourage you to use it. There was also a community outreach component to Track and Trace that engages those most vulnerable to straw purchasing. Operation Lipstick, with Mothers in Charge, conducted 20 workshops reaching 450 people while recruiting dozens of community ambassadors to educate young women on the dangers of straw purchasing. That grant recently ended, but we look forward to continuing our work with Mothers in Charge to continue our efforts to discourage those without a criminal record from becoming part of the problem by buying a gun for someone else. Finally, as part of Track and Trace, we created a working group that brought leaders of the ATF, FBI, state police, District Attorneys Association, chiefs of police, and the two largest police departments in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. It brought them together to regularly discuss trends in gun trafficking and collaborate on statewide violent crime issues. Prior to Track and Trace, there was no organized effort among those agencies to meet, share data, and use best practices to formulate a plan for gun trafficking in Pennsylvania. The first phase of the working group is to encourage local law enforcement to record your weapons and share data so that these guns can be seen across county lines. This special committee asked to provide information on untraceable ghost guns. A ghost gun starts out as an 80% receiver, and federal law permits them to be sold without a background check. An 80% receiver is essentially the building block of a gun. It needs to essentially use very minor modifications to make it into a fully functioning firearm. These are sold, as I said before, without a background check in Pennsylvania.
Excuse me, Brendan.
Yes.
Just 1 second. You have an echo.
Yeah, I'm trying to resolve that. Yep.
It may be your headphones.
I got
I'm
it.
not sure.
I got it. I think that resolved it. Did that resolve it, Councilman?
Yes, it did.
Essentially, what a ghost gun is, it's a gun without a serial number, and they're created from the 80% receivers. In Philadelphia, 95 ghost guns were recovered in 2019, and 84 have been recovered so far this year. In 2018, there were so few of them that they really weren't tracked. So we've seen an explosion of ghost guns on the streets of Philadelphia. This is clearly a troubling trend, and our agents have observed convicted felons purchasing duffel bags full of 80% receivers without showing so much as a driver's license at a gun show. There are more restrictions on buying a pack of cigarettes than purchasing an 80% receiver. Last year, due to this increase, there are more restrictions on buying a pack of Last year, the state police requested the Attorney General's legal opinion on whether 80% receivers are in fact firearms for the purpose of state law. Our office answered an emphatic yes, and despite an early injunction by the Commonwealth Court, the AG's legal opinion makes it easier for our agents to aggressively pursue felons in possession of 80% receivers. Now we can actually investigate felons in possession of 80% receivers, which was the harm that we were trying to reduce when we were watching convicted felons buy 80% receivers at gun shows. To summarize, the Office of Attorney General believes strongly in collaboration with its local and federal partners. With only 18 agents in the city and close to 5,000 crime guns recovered, we know we cannot do this alone. Initiatives like Operation Zombie, which recovered 35 firearms, including the rifle that killed 2-year-old Nicolette Rivera with the FBI and New Jersey State Police earlier this year. And another example, we worked last week with Montgomery County Detective, which led to the recovery of 4 firearms this past Monday, including an AR-15 and a shotgun. One of those guns was used in a shooting in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. We show that by attacking gun trafficking across county lines, we are stronger when we work together. Thank you very much, and I'll be willing to take questions.
Thank you very much, Brendan. And as always, I just want to thank you for your commitment and your dedication on this issue, being on the front line and aggressively addressing this issue. Before we go into questions, I want to acknowledge the presence of Councilman Curtis Jones. I want to acknowledge the presence of Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson. I have a question in regards to, you talked about the working group that the Attorney General
Yes, sir.
Put together regarding gun crimes. And I heard you mention all the major agencies except for alcohol, tobacco, and firearms and the district attorney's office. Did I miss you mentioning them?
Yeah, so no, ATF is a big component of the working group, and members of GVTF are involved in the working group as well. So GVTF is half state agents and half Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. So the agents communicate on a regular basis with the DAs, and DAs from Philadelphia have been present at previous working group meetings. So yes, no, both of those agencies are very much a part of the statewide working group, especially the ATF.
how often does the working group meet? How often does the gun violence task force meet? And how many personnel are dedicated from the AG's office, particularly to the district attorney's office, as well as the city of Philadelphia? I guess that would pretty much be the same.
Yeah, it's correct. So 18 agents, there's 4 supervisors. The supervisors are co-located with the Philadelphia district attorneys that are assigned to GVTF. So they meet and collaborate on a regular basis. As I said before, the state agents' cases are generally prosecuted by the Philadelphia district attorney's office. So there is constant contact and constant collaboration of those individuals.
At what point does a case get elevated to the AG's office? At what point does the case get elevated to the feds?
So any case that is originated by our agents generally will be looked at for either being prosecuted in the city, prosecuted by state attorney generals, or prosecuted in federal court. So it's a lot of different factors, Councilman. One involves the complexity of the criminal organization that's involved. Another one certainly would be the criminal record of the individuals involved, if it is elevated to that which would be appropriate for federal court. So those decisions are being made on a daily basis as to how those cases are prosecuted and where they are prosecuted.
As it relates to straw purchasing, and I know you have Operation Lipstick, do you have statistical data on the number of women who have been arrested as a result of engaging in straw purchasing?
We don't have, there is no solid number. There's no solid way to track that. Anecdotally, we saw a large amount of women that were being arrested, more so than in any other violent crime. And Mothers in Charge brought us Operation Lipstick, which was really on all fours with what we did as an agency, which was trying to find out where the gun came from. We knew that young women were particularly susceptible to straw purchasing, and oftentimes they didn't have criminal records, and they could be susceptible to gun traffickers using them for a myriad of reasons. Some of them are drug dependents. Some of them, they were victims of domestic violence. So we saw more women conducting straw purchases than conducting any other type of women conducting any other type of violent crime. It was very rare. I was a city DA for many years. It would be very rare to see a woman charged with a crime of violence, but straw purchasing much more than any other crime of violence.
All right, before I turn over to my colleagues, give me an idea of, you talked about the percentage of guns that come from the city of Philadelphia, the percentage of guns that come from the state of Pennsylvania. And I remember myself, Councilman Curtis Jones, Council President Darrell Clark, and some members of ATF, we visited the gun show up at Oaks, and really got a chance to see firsthand how easy it is for an individual to purchase a gun. Are we working on, or the level of, give me an idea of the level of resources and manpower dedicated to working with ATF and working with other law enforcement issues to go after those particular gun shows when they do come in the city of Philadelphia, and making sure they're monitored properly, but also the actual sloppy stores that sell guns loosely, regardless of a person's background. And the reason why I say that, and the whole purpose of this hearing, and as recently as Friday, when I was in the neighborhood where I live at, and a constituent approached me and said, "Councilman, I see you're trying to address this issue, but again, where are the guns coming from?" Like, we talk about our young people, and we talk about the things that they're engaging in, and it's always asked, where are these guns coming from? How are so many young people are able to obtain the level of guns that we're actually seeing? I think you've given a comprehensive look at this issue. from a data standpoint and an operational standpoint. But just want to give another deep dive in terms of those stores that are engaging in the illegal selling of guns. And most importantly, when we have these gun shows and they do come to our state, how are they monitored? I do know for a fact that you have a lot of young people that go out, like Tioga County, purchasing guns. There's been some shootings up at local universities that I'm very familiar with, but the guns are purchased, primarily ghost guns, in the middle state of Pennsylvania. So can you give me an overview from that aspect as well? And then I'll move on to my colleagues' questions.
Sure. So we work extremely closely with the ATF, especially statewide. We have 6 agents statewide, and currently 4 of them are specially deputized by the ATF and work closely with the ATF on a daily basis to monitor and understand what's happening at the gun shows. There's a gun show every weekend in Pennsylvania, and what we are seeking to do is use the data to find where the problematic gun shows are, where are the crime guns being recovered that originate from those shows. We can't do that right now, as we talked about with the federal database and the state database. Extremely difficult to do. We're going to use our analytical capability to find out which are the most problematic gun shows, where are the crime guns coming from, meaning which are the problematic shows across the state. Is it in Tioga? Is it Montgomery County? Or are they in Philly? Currently, no way to track it, but we are seeking ways to track that now.
All right. Thank you. At this time, I want to acknowledge the presence of Councilman Alan Dom, Councilwoman Helen Gim. I want to acknowledge for questioning first Councilwoman Jamie Gaudier, then Councilman Curtis Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chief Deputy. I just have a few questions. You talked earlier about kind of increasing the degree to which different agencies were participating in data sharing.
Yes.
Can you talk more around why an agency would not participate and just give us some more insight?
Yeah, sure. So I will start by saying our agency was not participating in data sharing. The Philadelphia police were not participating in data sharing. Pittsburgh police were not participating there. So some of the largest agencies in the state. I honestly think it is a question of education. It's been our experience that when we go and educate the agencies of the particular need to data share, that they are more than willing to do it. So just by getting Philadelphia and Pittsburgh to data share, that we talk specifically about Philadelphia, about 4,000 to 5,000 guns recovered in Philadelphia a year, about 10,000 recovered statewide. By signing up Philadelphia and by signing up Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, as I said before, about 5,000 guns a year, Pittsburgh over 1,000. We were able to see increase by well over half how many crime guns we were able to see in the data sharing. So honestly, I think the most basic answer to your question is it was education. We were able to find out that agencies weren't doing it and then educate them on the process of how to data share. Now, we are working our way down in a concerted effort of we hit the largest agencies. Now we're working on hitting the middle of the pack agencies, Harrisburg City, Erie, York, the middle, what you would say, like not the largest agencies, not the smallest, but the right in the middle of the pack agencies.
Okay. I also wanted to know, are there policy recommendations that you have gleaned from your work with the task force that could help us to reduce the flow of guns in the city?
I think that's a little bit more difficult to answer. I do think that Pennsylvania, even though we're often knocked for not having great state laws on guns, The fact that we do have a database at all is more robust than many other states around the country. And the background check system is extremely robust. But we work the cases, so it's hard for us to be making policy recommendations.
So that's not a goal of the task force
But certainly, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it a goal of the task force to offer policy recommendations that could help us?
I think the goal of the task force is certainly to supply the information for the policymakers to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Brendan, I want to follow up with my colleagues' line of questioning, and it may be some of the recommendations, but our purpose of our hearing is we're trying to get to the root causes of this issue with some solutions. And so, separate from recommendations, I would ask the question from your perspective, and being a person that's on the ground addressing this issue, and you've been working with this committee for several years. In your view, what could we be doing to address this issue better? Be it be resources, be it be coordination, be it be enforcement, but just give me your perspective as a person who's on the ground and addressing this issue on a day-to-day basis. We've talked after hours, as recently as this past Friday, about young people buying guns online, and so I noticed the issue is very near and dear to you.
Right.
So give me from your perspective, a councilman, if we had A, B, C, and D, this would make our life much easier. If we were doing A, B, C, and D, we could be more effective in addressing this issue. Just from your perspective, being a person that's on the ground addressing this issue on a day-to-day basis, and you did lay out the progress that we have been making thus far with initiatives such as E-Trace, which I think is great. And as I begin doing a deeper dive on this issue, I do see the opposition regarding data sharing on a federal level. I do see the opposition of individuals trying to protect businesses that actually engage in illegal straw purchasing sales. But from your perspective, give us just an overview of things that you believe that if you could snap your finger tomorrow, these particular things would make your life much easier in addressing this issue.
So certainly from our perspective, we have very limited resources, Councilman. We have 18 agents and a handful of lawyers, and there's 5,000 guns recovered in the city. I mean, so we work closely with the Philadelphia Police Department's Gun Violence Reduction Task Force that also has resources in the detective divisions and the ATF. But I mean, just based on those numbers alone, 18 agents for 5,000 guns, it's certainly a resource issue for us.
So I do want to go on a record of saying that my colleagues and I, we will begin following up with Governor Wolf, because we know through support from minority House Leader Jordan Harris, and I remember Senator Williams provided funding for the Gun Violence Task Force. Actually, he's one of the original creators of the Gun Violence Task Force. But a greater push for support on the state level, because as my colleague, Councilman Gardier, has been saying, we are in a state of emergency. And so we believe that separate from what we do on the city level, this also, we should be receiving support on a greater level, on the state level. And we're also going to be talking to our congressional representatives as well, to make sure that everyone is involved in addressing this issue, because at the end of the day, it's impacting all of us equally across the board in all neighborhoods and all zip codes on the city, state, and federal level. And so I just wanted to note that for the record. But obviously, if we could have more manpower on the ground, that will go toward addressing this issue and choking the flow of illegal guns here in the city of Philadelphia. Councilman Curtis Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of quick questions by way of information. Would you classify Pennsylvania as a pro-gun state? Like, I know we have Pittsburgh, I know we have Philadelphia, but in the middle, would you say that the vast majority of the state is pro-gun?
So that's a tough question for me to answer. There's certainly more. There's certainly a history, councilman, of a strong history of hunting in Pennsylvania, and we do respect those individuals' viewpoints very much so. It's I would certainly say from working in the city versus working in the counties, there is definitely a different perspective of guns. I mean, in the city, obviously they are leading to an extreme uptick of violence, and that's not seen in a lot of counties outside of Philadelphia. So for sure, there is a different. Certainly a different perspective and certainly different traditions that go along with gun ownership outside of Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and some other more urban centers in across Pennsylvania.
Having gone to school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, opening day for hunting was a religious holiday. They closed down schools and did things like that. But is it safe to say that a ghost gun is not used for the purpose of hunting?
Certainly we have not seen the problematic ghost guns are being used in crimes of violence, not in hunting. Correct.
And would you say that in the paper tracing of let me take a step back. It is illegal for a straw purchase and punishable by what type of
Sure.
penalty law?
Yeah, sure. So as you will recall, several years ago, there was a very tragic case where a young police officer was killed by the name of Brad Fox. He was killed using a straw purchase firearm. As a result of that, the Pennsylvania legislature introduced a 5-year mandatory sentence for anybody that straw purchased 2 or more firearms. So there can be significant penalties associated with multiple straw purchases.
Do you find it a common defense for those individuals accused that somehow that gun was lost or stolen?
Certainly in urban areas, we do see straw purchasers that report guns lost or stolen, yes.
And at this point in time in the Commonwealth, is it a requirement to report guns lost or stolen?
Yeah, no, that is there is no requirement in the Commonwealth to report firearms lost or stolen.
So an individual buying a gun at a gun show today could resell it or have it lost or stolen, and then it wind up in the commission of a crime a year later and then say, oh yeah, that gun was stolen or I lost it in the back seat of my car.
Yes, sir.
In your answering of the question, what thing we could do that Chairman Johnson talked about that could make us safer? Could the requirement of guns being lost or stolen being reported, would that be a useful tool to protect ourselves, particularly in big cities like Philadelphia?
Certainly in cases where individuals use that as a defense, yes.
All right, so that's one solid thing that we really need to get our partners at the state and local level in tune and cooperating with each other on. Second thing, when you start to get these illegal weapons or confiscated weapons, is there a pattern of the type of individuals that are being caught with them? Are they your user types, dealer types, distributor types? Who fits the profile of the people we are apprehending with these kinds of illegal weapons?
So we focus less on the end user. Philadelphia police are generally the ones that arrest those individuals with the guns. We work backwards and try to find out who purchased the gun initially and how did it get into the end user's hands. So So any questions regarding the end user, the end possessor, which is, certainly something that we look at when we analyze the case, but we are more focused on tracking it back to how it got into the illegal stream of commerce. And the end users usually are not fruitful and will not tell us where they got the gun, as you would know that, yeah.
So the individuals that are distributing, I'm going to call them middle distributors, is there a pattern of the type of, are they registered dealers with the Commonwealth?
Oh, no.
Who are they?
So they're generally individuals that are able to obtain guns via other people doing straw purchases. So they're usually people. So you're talking about the general middleman gun trafficker is somebody that has a criminal record, somebody that's able to recruit straw purchasers, and somebody that has access to illicit funds to be able to pay to front the costs of the guns and then kick them. Get the money back when they sell the firearm. So yeah, definitely not registered dealers for sure. But the inception is the straw purchase. So the individual that middles the guns is somebody that usually, again, has a criminal record and is able to recruit straw purchasers.
Have you come into contact or heard of places where people, and usually they were taverns, I heard, bars, that you could, in neighborhoods, rent a gun?
Yes, and that would be illegal, yes.
Have you heard of cases where, or been able to apprehend individuals that had operations where there was a gun put in circulation and it was almost like musical chairs? If you get caught with this gun probably had all kinds of cases and or crimes associated with it.
Correct. All
Have
the time.
you come into contact with that?
Yes. All the time.
Can you elaborate?
Sure. So as Commissioner Outlaw discussed, the ATF has a program that is able to use analytics from fired cartridge casings that are left on the street after a shooting and then can link back to a particular gun. So we oftentimes find that there may be 100 shootings in a week, but it's not as if 100 guns were used. Maybe 30 guns were used in 100 shootings. So we do often see, Councilman, that a gun is being used in multiple crimes. It's not just a gun being recovered. It's a gun that was recovered that was used in 5 or more shootings. So the ATF's data has significantly increased, as the commissioner spoke about, and we are finding ways to use that data to better advance not only the case against the individual that's caught with the gun, but also try to solve some of those shootings that the gun was used in. So all of these things that you're discussing, Councilman, we are ramping up the ability to use data to attack not only the end user or the origin of the gun, but also to solve these outstanding shootings.
So, Mr. Chairman, data becomes good information that creates good public policy. We need to take a data-driven approach to solving this problem. We should, and I'm calling for all hands on deck, to look at the last 100 shooters in the city of Philadelphia and say, and put it up on a spreadsheet and say, all right, this individual, this was his first use of a gun, second use of a gun, third use of a gun. If it's the third use of a gun, why did he get 2 extra chances to get it wrong and become the end shooter? And the tracing of those guns. So the individual pulling the trigger, but also the pathway of the gun, so that we can know, A, where it came from, and then why did this individual have the third chance opportunity to take a shot at someone and often take a life. We have to start to codify that in a way so that we can not point fingers, but at least tighten up where we need to tighten up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. And I know that information has been requested actually prior to us having the last hearing. And so I'm going to do a follow-up with the request. I know I reached out to the district attorney's office early on because you mentioned this during the last hearing, and so I'll do a follow-up and then also see what other partners have to be a part of that conversation so we can get an overall look. And before I call on Councilman Maria Quiñones Sanchez, Brendan, I talked to you last week regarding how, and check this out, Councilman Jones, how folks are buying guns online, right? Brendan, can you just give us a real brief overview of those types of operations, our limited ability to address it and what we may have to do, or from a policy standpoint, rather it be city, state, or federal level to address those types of issues in the future?
So I will tell you, we are quickly ramping up our ability to track open source social media to better understand how items are being trafficked using the internet. So I'll just give you a very brief example. We were able to use social media to investigate, arrest, and detain an individual that was selling dynamite during the civil unrest used to blow up ATMs. Now, what's important about that case is he also had extended magazines when he was arrested, and we were able to link him to a straw purchasing case. So essentially what I'm telling you is we were able to use the internet to advance an investigation. That was so successful that we are now starting to put resources in a much more strategic fashion to address those same issues. So as I said before in my testimony, we have analysts who are using social media more to see how social media is being used to traffic not only firearms, but, as you had said, the extended clips and items that would make these guns infinitely more dangerous.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilwoman Maria Quiñones Sanchez.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Brendan and our chair for facilitating this. I have to go on the record and really thank the Attorney General's office for their hands-on approach, particularly as it relates to the Kensington initiative. And I know we celebrate some victories there. We could do that every day, and the conditions in Kensington, unfortunately, continue to be quite dire. And as it relates to the gun violence in Kensington, because it's so associated with the open-air drug marketing, what recommendations, I know some of the other shootings in other parts of the city are not necessarily as directly related to it. Would you say that, are you clear around the narcotic strategy in the city of Philadelphia and the role that you guys play in that? I've been encouraging and trying to get an idea of what is our strategy in the city.
So, Councilwoman, and I think you know this, for the Kensington Initiative, we received a federal grant to partner with Temple University to analyze how these operations are conducted, how we choose our targeting area, and what are the results of the operation prior to the date of enforcement and post date of enforcement. So to answer your question, analysis has found that overdose deaths are spatially clustered nearest the most active drug markets, which are also the markets associated with the most gun violence. So let me say that again. Overdose deaths are linked to active drug markets. Active drug markets are linked to organizations that use the most gun violence. These are the organizations that the Attorney General's office, in combination with the Philadelphia Police Department, are targeting. These are drug trafficking organizations that we are targeting. So our analysis is showing that we are in the right place, targeting the right groups. So we will continue to use the location data of overdose deaths to help refine our priority targets in the future. So, Councilwoman, as you know, this is very targeted, it's very specific, but this has been a multiple year strategy. using data to show where we should be and how to attack these organizations, and also to measure the results. And as you know, in 2 out of the 3 operations, we saw a significant decrease 6 months post in police calls for service, shootings, other indicators that Temple University has tracked. So it is certainly our strategy to work with the Philadelphia Police Department, the federal agencies, the FBI as a partner in the Kensington Initiative, as is the DEA, SEPTA, collaborate with those agencies and target the most violent drug organizations that we are being led to by the overdose death data.
Do you think that the city has been very resistant to reclaiming some of these open air markets? Do you think that is a wise investment to try to reclaim some of these corners? I mean, the amount of open air drugs, and we know what the corners are, right? I can listen to for you. 3133 Kensington Avenue, 2800 Bolton Knot. Like the fact that I can list the 10 top corners in the district, and we know they operate daily. Do you think, even on a short-term basis, reclaiming these spaces would lead to be somewhat successful?
So, as you know, what is somewhat remarkable about the Kensington Initiative is not only that it uses data to target the most violent drug gangs, but there's also a community outreach component on the back end, because law enforcement is not going to get us out of this problem. Law enforcement can clear the corners, but we really rely on the neighborhoods, and we do, and for a long time we were relying on the Resiliency Project to ensure that neighborhoods had good lighting. After we cleared the corner, that there was good lighting, that the abandoned houses were taken care of, that the community was heard, and that the community could hold those corners. So as you know, our strategy in Kensington relies heavily on not only achieving some law enforcement gains, but also holding those gains by using city resources and the neighborhood, really having the neighborhoods be guardians of their own blocks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, in this post-COVID world, we have lost all the gains that we had in Kensington. And in the last 6 months, it's just been a third world country. And so I don't know what happens first. Is it the removal of the 300 plus unsheltered active users? Is it the taking over of the corners? Right now, we have a convergence of all of that, and we just have lawlessness. And so I've been, again, looking for answers, not wanting to point fingers, because I want to, echo the calls. This is a public health crisis. We need all hands on deck. But what is happening in Kensington would not be allowed to fester anywhere else in the city. And it's just outrageous to me that we're normalizing it and traumatizing an entire generation of young people over there. And the Resilience Project, was not as effective. And we've called on, the restoration of Kensington. Kensington has always had drugs, right? We know since the days of factories and the workers and so forth. But what we have in Kensington now in the lawlessness is just out of control. And we appreciate, again, all of the efforts, but it's not enough. It's not enough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Sanchez. Any questions from any other members of council?
Chairman Johnson, Alan Don.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Thank you.
Alan Don.
Thank you. I just want to join in. I took Councilwoman Maria Cona Sanchez, I took a 2-hour drive tour on Thursday up Kensington Avenue from Girard just past Allegheny. And what I saw there was shocking. Worse than I've ever seen. Worse than I have ever seen. And I would say it's below a third world country. I've never seen anything like this in my life. It's horrible what's going on there. And so whatever I can do, we can do, we need to support that area. We need to fix that issue. That is a disgrace to the city. Let me ask you a few questions, because it sounds to me like myself and all my colleagues and Chairman Johnson, we all want to find solutions to this problem, but it sounds like most of these solutions have to come from the state, which leaves us to a degree with our hands a bit tied. So I'm just going to throw out a few ideas, and I'm going to ask you, Chairman Johnson, can we put together maybe a list of policies? I know that the Vice Chairman Jones had some good ideas, and others have ideas that we could submit to our state people and say, look, sign up to these whatever 10 points, 20 points of changes we need to make to get this under control. So I'm going to throw out some ideas. Some of them may be off the wall, but I'll throw them out anyway. Is there a possibility to have annual registrations for guns? So every year you have to re-register the gun every year to make it legal. It's one question. I know that I just saw the Inquirer, I think 3 days ago, which is concerning me. Then in 2019, they reported 217,000 checks through instant check system for guns were completed versus this quarter to 314,000, over 100,000 more checks for guns, a 45% increase, which is shocking to me, considering 100,000 more potential gun applications in Pennsylvania. So, and I also understand once you apply, you can get a gun in a very short amount of time. Have other states lengthened the amount of time? Could it be, 60 days, whatever, 45 days? Would that help? And the last component, which is probably pie in the sky, could we require some sort of educational component when you purchase a gun so that people understand, because guns, this is like a serious weapon or tool. Could we require some sort of education so that it's just a basic knowledge of when you're a gun owner, what your responsibilities are? These are just ideas, but I think in general, Chairman Johnson, if we could come up with whatever we think is productive and get our state people on board, we probably can get Pittsburgh to join in. Maybe we can force the issues that way, because I know all of us want to get this under control, and it seems like we can't do anything really locally in Philadelphia. I don't know if there's a response to it, but I'll just, that was my quick statement.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Brendan.
So Councilman, there are 50 different states, and there's 50 different state laws on how they treat guns. I will tell you that there are some states that require education when a firearm is purchased. There are some states, as you know, that there is a wait time to obtaining a firearm, and you know that Pennsylvania specifically, state law does not allow a registry. So I do have information on all of those issues, and we would be happy to provide that with your office.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan.
No, thank you very much, Councilman Dom. And Brendan, can you provide that to the committee as a whole?
Yes,
that
sir.
Information, that would be very, very helpful. And Councilman Dom, I'll also follow up with you, because there is some advocacy that we still can do as it relates to our state legislator as well as our governor, Tom Wolf, as it relates to supporting this issue here in the city of Philadelphia. Brendan, I just want to thank you again for always being dedicated and your commitment, as well as Attorney General Josh Shapiro and the work that he has done in addressing this issue. You know, for me, again, it's critically important that when we talk about all the movements that we are addressing right now in our society and in our country, and we talk about the issue of Black Lives Matter, and we talk about institutional racism, and we talk about systematic racism. The reason why tracking down the flow of illegal guns is so critically important, because it does exemplify the reason of why Black lives do truly matter. We're seeing a level of young people dying in the streets of Philadelphia and all throughout this country on a day-to-day basis. And so we're aggressively advocating and fighting for a level of urgency when it comes to not only addressing why these young men pick up their guns, but where the guns are actually coming from. And so thank you for your time and your dedication in being here today, because I am asked when I'm inside my community, where are the guns coming from? There are no gun shops in Point Breeze. There are no gun factories in Strawberry Mansions, which means they're coming from somewhere. And so we appreciate the work that you are doing. I remember the great Congresswoman Maxine Waters. She posed a question some time ago, which I thought at that time was pretty bold as relates to the crack epidemic. Where was crack coming from as relates to urban neighborhoods all throughout our country? And again, it just goes to us single like focusing on making sure that when we address this issue comprehensively, we're taking the tools that I call that are devastating our community out of the hands of young people. So thank you, Brendan O'Malley. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your hard work, and most importantly, being sincere in addressing this issue. At this particular time, I'm going to ask for the clerk to please call the next witness.
Judge Leon Tucker.
Judge Tucker, before you give your testimony, I just want to thank you for your patience. You've been on this call. You've been on this hearing, as well as with Brendan O'Malley, I think over the last 3 days. And so 2 or 3 days, well, 2 days, but we thank you for your patience. We thank you for being here today. We know the courts are open today and you have a very busy schedule, but we appreciate you saying, you know what, this is important and we need to be here. And hopefully, as part of your presentation, there was some, and your purpose of being here is because over the last few days during this hearing, Councilman Jones keep asking a question elegantly, but the community is always asking the question, if a person has several arrests with guns, and they are known shooters, or they are engaging in some types of criminal act with guns, how are they keep coming out into our community time and time again, committing acts with guns? And part of this hearing that we've had in the past couple of days was the issue around bail, and either the proper bail giving or the lack of. So it's critically important that we have our court system here to give us an overview on what that process looked like, and specifically around those who carry and use illegal guns. And so with that being said, Your Honor, you can start your testimony.
Well, thank you very much, Councilman. Again, the other members as well, for allowing me to be here again. You know, being here, it reminds me of growing up in Strawberry Mansion and attending Thomas Fitzsimons Junior High School in 8th grade civics, where we're talking about the 3 branches of government. So it's not often that the judiciary has the opportunity to come before the legislative branch of our government and to speak. But I really relish this opportunity because this is very important to me. I have been concerned with this issue for about 4 years now, sending out on a weekly basis to the criminal justice partners, the shootings that are going on in our city, the killings that are going on in our city, and the things that have just brought so much violence to our city. As a result of that, there's people of color, mainly people of color, that are dying, that are getting shot. And we look at that, and it's almost become a point where it's normalized, which it should not be. My concern is that something must be done. And you have to understand and appreciate that the court is on the back end of this. What we see and do is at the end. Now, there's 2 courts in Philadelphia. There's municipal court and there's common pleas court. And for the members and the public who don't understand or know that, municipal court is composed of about 25 judges and maybe 3 senior judges. And they hear misdemeanor cases, and they also hear the preliminary hearings for the felony cases. The Court of Common Pleas, which I am the supervising judge of the criminal section, is composed of around 93 judges, and they're broken down into different sections in terms of family court, civil court, orphans court. And the criminal section is composed of about 34 judges, 35 judges now, with Judge Moore just coming on about 2 weeks ago. Now, as a supervising judge, supervision is something that can be misunderstood. Judges are elected in the Court of Common Pleas for 10 years. their supervisor, me, I do not tell them what to do, who to find guilty, who not to find guilty, in terms of sentencing and those things. That's left to the discretion of the judge. And oftentimes we see complaints, and it's mainly in the newspaper. An attorney or the district attorney may not be satisfied with something that a judge do, but there's a proper procedure for that to be remedied. That's what the appellate courts are for. We are very civic minded. Our standard pretty much is the safety of the city. So we do what we think is right under the circumstances that are presented to us. And I say that to say, mainly to get into the specifics that were addressed to me. I was asked to talk about the topics of gun court and how gun court was worked before it was discontinued. And I just happened to be a gun court judge in the year 2006 to 2007, which I believe was the second year of the gun court. And the questions mainly was it independently evaluated, and what were the conclusions of that evaluation? Do we favor establishment of gun court, and if so, what would the recommendation in terms of structuring it? What ingredients would be necessary to ensure the success of gun court if it was revived? And the other questions that are put to me or that were mentioned mainly deal with municipal court, which of course is under the guidance of Judge Patrick Dugan. But there is one question there: what authority do trial judges have to revisit magistrates' rulings? Now, municipal court again is a court that deals with the arraignment, setting bail, making decisions in terms of pretrial detention or release. And there's an appellate procedure that a case can get to common pleas court during that process. And oftentimes it is appealed to common pleas court. And the other question was, does the First Judicial District, which is the common pleas court and municipal court, collect statistics in terms of the outcomes of preliminary arraignments? Again, that would fall under municipal court, not court of common pleas. Now, the purpose of gun court, which again started, I believe it was in 2004 and went on until 2011. And during that time, the cases that had a conviction of the violation of the Uniform Firearms Act as a lead charge. Now, when I say the lead charge, that means that was the main charge. Those cases in gun court did not involve robbery with a gun, burglary with a gun. It was mainly a possession of a gun, and the person was stopped in a car stop or whatever the circumstances may have been. Now, this would encompass all risk of levels of supervision by probation, and there's various risk of supervision, low risk, moderate risk, and high risk, and individuals that were convicted. This would not include individuals who had violent crimes oftentimes in gun court. It could be a retired security guard who had gotten their license renewed or forgot to get their license renewed. So they were charged with possession of a firearm. Or it could have been a person that was 6 years old or so with the first conviction of the possession with no violence attached. Oftentimes what we'd see is individuals who had a current violent act as well as a history of violence with a gun. And that case would be sent to another program in the major program. The major program in the Court of Common Pleas, the criminal section, there's cases that hear violent crimes, your homicides, your aggravated assaults, and things of that nature. So it most definitely included individuals that had current violent acts as well as a history of violence, but sometimes those gun cases would be sent to a different program. This would be done mainly by the district attorney's office determining as to what program the case should be in. Now, the problem evolved when there was a gun charge, but the lead charge was, say, aggravated assault with some other charge, and the gun charge was dropped in terms of maybe a guilty plea or whatever, and the gun charge may not have been the most serious charge. Now, these cases would not end up in gun court. It would be in what we call the major program, as I mentioned earlier. So the supervision of those defendants after conviction by probation and parole would not be under gun court. Now, even if there was let's say, a possession with the intent to deliver a controlled substance with a gun, that would not go to gun court. So the court, in many times, would not be comprised with defendants who were a risk to the community. Oftentimes in gun court, in the cases that I dealt with, and between the years of 2006 and 2007, there was approximately 1,500 cases that we dealt with. And those cases were mainly individuals, first time conviction. And so the recidivism was relatively light. We usually did not see them anymore. Now, the probation officers in those cases were unarmed at first, and they would go out with police officers. The officers eventually became armed officers and certified with the Firearm Education Training Commission. And the defense tactics was done by the protective security systems. Now, gun court was created to establish the continuity with gun court judge, the district attorney, the public defender, and the court. And the intent was to have strict supervision and strict penalties for violations. This often would take place in terms of intensive supervision upon defendants that were not identified as a substantial risk to the community. Now, there was a lot of risk done to create gun court, but there was very little research to the effect of gun court on the violence within the community. We might find that those in gun court were not the majority of the violators as possessed, or rather as opposed to the people who were calling violence in the community. Oftentimes, again, those cases where the violence was the lead charge would be diverted away from gun court. Now, this may be true that because when gun court was disbanded, many of the defendants were classified as low risk, and they were low risk. Oftentimes, there would be very little violence in their background. The fact that they had a gun, hadn't shot anyone or anything of that nature, would allow them to be classified as low risk. Now, in recreating gun court, you need substantial more manpower in terms of supervision upon conviction, and make a criteria as to whether you want all persons who possess a gun, regardless of the circumstances, to be under strict supervision. If we are trying to capture those individuals that are considered a major threat to the community by way of the violence that they impose or can be predicted to impose on the community, you would need to capture those defendants with a history of violence or committing violent acts, especially if the lead charge was not a gun. You would need the district attorney as well as the public defender and other justice partners on board and sending these cases to gun court. Again, if you have all of these defendants in gun court just for possession, you may not be properly supervising those defendants that really need to be supervised or really didn't have to be supervised because of their lack of violence. So in essence, what I'm saying is it can be confusing. You may have too much supervision or you may not have enough supervision. The probation officers that I've spoken to believe that gun court would be effective if there was the ability to identify those individuals with weapons or to lead charges of violence where a weapon was present, even if the charges were dropped. The gun charge was dropped. In other words, if a gun was involved, then that person should be in gun court, even if the gun charges were dropped. And oftentimes, those charges are dropped for various reasons in terms of negotiating guilty pleas, or that particular charge may not be as strong in terms of the ability to present it. Again, it would only be successful if the right selection of the population and all parties, when I say all parties, the district attorney and the public defender, would be agreeing on that the defendant, that case would go to gun court. Now, just as a follow-up, there was a question as to whether or not the program had been evaluated after it was disbanded, and it was. It was evaluated by an individual who was doing a graduate thesis. So I'm not sure if that would be a formal evaluation, but nonetheless, an evaluation was done. And the results indicate that there was no statistically significant decline in the aggregate rates of the 4 gun-related crime in the 10 categories in Philadelphia in the 24 months after the introduction of the gun court program. In other words, once the gun court started and there was an output of individuals, there was no significant decline in the rate of gun-related crimes. Now, as a side note, there has been ways that we have attempted to reintegrate gun court. Currently, we started in July of 2019 a non-fatal shooting program, and there's been a substantial amount of non-fatal shootings in Philadelphia. We started that in 2019. Any case where there was an individual who was shot would go into this program, and the program was overseen by a homicide judge. So any individual who was charged with shooting someone was put into basically the homicide court program. Currently, we have 130 cases in that category. We have, because of the pandemic and the courts being closed in that regard, there's been no preliminary hearings until maybe a couple of weeks ago. So there's substantial cases in the pipeline that has not gotten to the Court of Common Pleas yet. Currently, a large portion of those cases, as a matter of fact, 68 of those cases involve one case, and that's the Maurice Hill case that you may be familiar with, the individual in Tioga, where there was shootings and the individuals did not expire. The district attorney's office is internally designates which cases go to that program, and it's upon them and their desire to put those cases in the program. A substantial amount of those cases also will be coming out of the investigating grand jury program. So those cases we don't have a firm understanding of because those cases are done under the privacy and the secrecy of the investigating grand jury. Also, again, due to the pandemic slowdown, we've not added new cases into the program for the past 6 months since there has been no preliminary hearings. We fully anticipate this program to move on and to balloon significantly once we open the courts back up, which we have done today. Now, moving on, there is quite a bit that's disturbing. Just last week alone, let's look at August 24th through August 30th. That was last week. And I get this report every Wednesday, and it's terrible. It's so disturbing. There were 50 people that suffered gunshot wounds in Philadelphia. 50 people. And this has become the norm. 4 of those shootings were fatal. Now, also interesting is that 10 of those people were under active probation supervision that suffered those gunshot wounds. In other words, 10 people were on probation that got shot, and 2 of those people passed away because of the gunshots were fatal. 7 people who suffered gunshot wounds of the 50 had open cases. Fortunately, none of them passed away. Now, when we compare this to last year, it's astonishing. But before I mention those numbers, Commissioner Outlaw testified on Thursday, I believe it was, that so far this year there's been 1,334 individuals that's been shot, and 303 of those individuals passed away. 222 of those individuals, as a side note, were on probation that got shot, and 49 of those individuals that were on probation died. So this is basically what we're dealing with. 170 of those individuals had open cases, and 34 of those individuals were pronounced dead as a result of the shooting. Now, when we look at last year, this time, 2019, there was 929 people shot, as opposed to 1,334. In terms of the people that were on probation that were shot, last year was 212. This year, 222. So the problem, as I see it, is that we kind of know individuals who are more than likely to get shot. We kind of know individuals who are probably doing the shooting. And that's where we get into the various programs, focused deterrence, and all those other programs, which I am involved in on a limited degree as chair of the Criminal Justice Advisory Board, which is a program established by each county, which brings together all of the criminal justice partners in the effort to do things, to get grants, and to make betterment of the things that the justice partners do. Now, I guess it was last week when Councilman Derek Green was asking the question, well, what has changed? Well, so many things have changed. I guess the most common thing that comes to my mind is that the social media has changed. The way of thinking has changed in terms of our society. Just think, could you imagine Diana Ross or the Four Tops singing any of the lyrics that you hear commonly sung today, or even Prince or Michael Jackson? And I say that anecdotally, but it's true. I mean, our society has changed so much. What has become the norm now would not have been accepted, say 20 years ago, even 5 years ago. So there's no quick fix. There's no easy way out. But if there was a way that we can do it, it would have to be a collaborative effort. It concerns me because these are people of color, which I happen to be. And I sincerely believe that more effort needs to be into it by everyone. I'm not pointing fingers. I won't point fingers. But I think that if we looked at the problems that we are going through and what our young people are going through, the schools have changed. So many things have changed. It involves our culture, education, the poverty level. There's no one quick fix. And it's like one of those ping pong things that, you hit down on one and the other pops up somewhere else. But again, collectively, we must do something. I don't have the answers. The Court of Common Pleas is ready and available to do whatever we can. Of course, we have obligations of being impartial. So our ability to be at the forefront in terms of this is limited, but nonetheless, we are here, ready, available to do whatever it is that we can do. And then one last point, since January of 2018, there has been over 10,000 persons charged with possession of a firearm in Philadelphia without a license, carrying a firearm on a public street of Philadelphia, and all of the violent crimes as well. Now, this includes the homicides as well as the robberies, the burglaries, everything that had a gun involved in it. There has been in excess of 10,000 people, and some of these are repetitive, but 10,000 people since 2018. I will avail myself to any questions if there are, but I can go on and on and on. And oftentimes I do email or forward the emails that I get to certain members of City Council, as well as other justice partners, because it's quite disturbing to see what our young people are doing to each other. Oftentimes, because the glamorization of what they do, they learn from song lyrics, videos, and things on social media, which is just a way of the time. And this is not just Philadelphia. If you look at Chicago, LA, that's no excuse. And we should do something about it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Leon Tucker. Before I turn it over for questions from committee members, and I also want to acknowledge the presence of Councilman Mark Squilla. And I don't know if some of these questions we want to ask should be addressed by you or Judge Dugan. He declined to participate, but we thank you for being here. But I'll still ask some of the questions because some of the issues revolve around the issue of bail, right? It was a very thorough presentation given regarding the bail system, regarding something that you even touched on just now in wrapping up your last remarks when you talked about 10,000 people being arrested for gun-related crimes. And then you also just mentioned that some of them repeatedly, right? That's the question that a lot of people are asking. That's the question that Councilman Jones has touched on several different times. That's why he wants to do an analysis of 100 individuals who have been arrested with guns, because it does beg the question. We know there's a lot of issues that needs to be addressed in addressing the issue of gun violence. But we do recognize if we have a revolving door when it comes to individuals being arrested with gun crimes and they're getting back out on the street, and using those guns to commit more crimes. We're trying to narrow that gap and even eliminate it if need be in terms of working collaboratively with all of the agencies. And so just some questions around bail. And if you say, Councilman, if these doesn't apply to what I oversee in terms of court system, just reply accordingly. But one is, how are preliminary arrangements bail commissioners selected? How do they make decisions regarding pretrial detention or release, including whether to set bail and how much? And what authority do trial judges have to revisit magistrates' rulings? And does the First Judicial District collect statistics regarding the outcomes of preliminary arraignments?
So to answer your questions, mainly what you're talking about is what occurs in municipal court. Which would be under the president judge of court. I hear echo.
I hear the echo as well.
But to give you a limited response as best I can without delving into municipal court, it's my understanding that municipal court has a process, a thorough process that's been in place for many, many years in terms of the way that they select their bail commissioners and whatnot. But more specifically, the question that you put in terms of, do the Court of Common Pleas judge have the opportunity to revisit the decisions made by the magistrate in terms of bail decisions? The answer is yes, and it happens quite frequently. Let's say, for instance, if an individual is arrested and bail is set at $100,000, once the preliminary hearing is held, bail can be revisited again. Again, that's at municipal court. But after that, usually 14 days after the preliminary hearing, that's an arraignment, and that's when the case becomes a Court of Common Pleas case, and bail motions are filed. Usually it's filed in our motions court, which is a part of the criminal section of the Court of Common Pleas, and that bail is revisited by the judge on a petition by the defense attorney and the participation by the district attorney. Now, mind you that the only way that things happen in the Court of Common Pleas, and mainly in municipal court as well, is someone has to file a petition or a motion or something to get it to the court's attention. I guess during the pandemic, it was initially thought that the judges could just open the prisons and let everyone out. In essence, a petition has to be filed for whether it's oral or written, but something has to be filed. And so that would happen in this particular case when you ask the question, does the Court of Common Pleas judge have a chance to revisit what's been done in municipal court? And the answer to that is yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I'm going to call on Councilman Mark Squilla and Councilwoman Jamie Gaudier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and then thank you, Your Honor, for all your input and appreciate all the work and effort you put into this along the years. Would you suggest that gun court was something that was a positive or a negative?
No, it was positive, definitely positive. I think that it probably did not go far enough because, in essence, what you had is individuals who were charged with possession of a firearm without a license, possession with a firearm on the streets of Philadelphia, or a felon who should not have in his possession a firearm. So just those three cases, three charges rather. What you need, in my estimation, is something broader, because in those cases, you usually do not have the recidivism. And so once there's a conviction, what you have is the probation department, the parole department involved, and the manpower there, which before was funded, I believe, by a federal grant. And once that money ran out, it just went away. But my point is that there was intense supervision where it was not needed. You had individuals who were, let's say, in high school who had just graduated, working, and oftentimes the excuse would be...
Sorry, go ahead, Judge.
Yeah, oftentimes the excuse would be he had a gun for his own protection, which would not be a valid excuse, but could be understood. But to answer your question, did gun court work? It did. Could it have worked better? Yes. If we bring it back, will it work better? Only if all of the parties, and I say the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, agree that all cases involving guns would go a certain way. Similar to what we're doing in the non-fatal shooting program, where all non-fatal shooting cases end up in the homicide program, to show the seriousness of the case, dealing with the judges who handle homicide cases. The only difference is that we have a live victim who may be paralyzed, who may be seriously injured, but nonetheless, we do have someone who can give testimony as to the case and the charges and the weapon that was used and the person who did it.
I appreciate that, and I understand funding is always an issue, but I think the theme that we're hearing over and over again is collaboration, working together. How do we get people to work together to resolve this issue? And that's something we really have to strive to do. And if we're not going to have everybody pointing in the same direction, we'll never get to that end result that we want. Because we saw other programs. We used to have community court program, and it was sort of a deterrent for quality of life issue type things that didn't lead to this. And then you had focused deterrence, and certain funding levels came and then they went. But I think as a whole, if we're going to really make this work, the only way to do it is, first of all, put our money where our mouth is and get the resources available. And then second is to have the collaboration with the courts, with the different departments, and then make sure that we stick to a program that can then have results. And I think these results have to be measured, like you're saying, so that you can see the actual benefits of it. And where we are today, and sometimes we have a success in a certain program, and then we sort of say, oh, you know what, we don't need this, or that really didn't help, it was something else that did it, so forth and so on. When we start playing against each other, I think we need to come back together and to make it work. So I appreciate your involvement in this, and I see your dedication, and hopefully we could work with the courts and with our departments to create another program like the gun court and maybe even community court and some other courts to really get to the challenges that are at hand. And I appreciate your efforts.
Well, thank you very much. And again, this court stands ready and available to always sit down and collaborate. And if we can move something forward to eliminate some of this violence, even just one shot, one person would be significant in my mind. When we're looking at 50 people getting shot in 1 week, it's something that has to be dealt with.
We agree. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gardier, then Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Judge Tucker.
Good morning.
First, can you clarify for me, did you say that 222 people on probation were a portion of the 1,300 shot, or were a portion of the over 300 plus murdered? Can you just clarify that statistic for me?
Yeah, last year during the year, or so far this year, 2020, and this is as of August 30th, there was 1,320 people shot. 1,334 people that were shot in Philadelphia County. 303 were fatal, and 222 people on adult probation were shot, and 49 of those 222 were fatally shot.
I see. So, I mean, certainly that leaves a lot of people who were shot and who were murdered that were not on probation, but it's still a glaring statistic. So that means that if we would have prevented those 222 people on probation from being shot, our shootings would be almost 20% less. And so what are we, in your opinion, what are we not doing in supporting, or what are we failing to do in supporting people who are on probation so that this doesn't occur? How can we, that seems to be, it just sticks out to me so much that we know that people on probation are likely to be involved in this activity. What are we not doing?
Well, that's an excellent question. And if I knew the answer, it wouldn't happen. I don't know the answer, candidly. The problem is that we have competing interests. We have individuals, and again, I'm not pointing fingers, but it becomes the flavor of the month, if you will. Let's let them out. We got too many people on probation, and we've reduced substantially the number of people that are on probation. We have reduced the level of supervision, especially during the pandemic. There was statements made, I guess it was the last hearing or so, that the probation department was closed. That's not true. We have not closed. The probation department is working every day. In terms of supervising their clients, it's done by phone. They're not coming into the office yet, but nonetheless, that's being done. So I guess specifically to answer your question, should there be more strict supervision? Perhaps there could be. And then the other side of that will be, well, you're supervising them too much. Are they being held in violation? Then the other side of that is, they should not be violated because for whatever reason, you're being too strict on them. In terms of the level, whether or not they're in the high level, where they report more frequently, or the moderate level or the low level, the question becomes, what level are they? And why are they at that level? But nonetheless, these are the things, the competing interests that we're dealing with, and it's difficult. If there was one answer, one quick fix, I'm certain that we would have done it by now. But unfortunately, yes, 222 people on adult probation were shot, and 49 of those people are no longer with us.
And I guess I want to be clear that I'm not necessarily trying to make a point that people should have been held in prison, or that all we should be doing is strict enforcement of supervision. But it seems to me that since that number is so large, there's something that we should be able to figure out between supervision and support that can help to save those people. So just something for consideration for my colleagues.
I do not disagree with you. I'm certain that during the testimony that you heard at the last hearing of Chief Darlene Miller, her heart is only in what she does. She is one of my favorite people in terms of advocating not only for the rights of probation, but for the clients that she oversees. And I'm certain almost every day she comes up with some program, something new, something else to do, not only for the benefit of probation, but for the people that she serves as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I bring on Councilman Curtis Jones, and this question really isn't for you, rather it's a statement, Judge Tucker. I know now during the pandemic, right, if the level of probation and even parole, because you can't do in-person direct one-on-one supervision, I think it gives the client, if they aren't trying to do the right thing, the upper hand to be upfront with you, only for the simple fact that it's not the same type of supervision where you're coming in, you look at your probation officer, your parole officer in the eye, telling them what you're doing with your life, what are you trying to do, what do you need help with. I know for a fact that there's a lot of individuals who engage in illegal drug use when it comes to some of these gun crimes that are taking place. Because of COVID-19, warrants aren't being taken right now. If they are, let me know something different. But I know for a fact if you aren't doing in-person supervision, one-on-one meetings, then I don't think that warrants are being taken at this particular point in time. It also leads to a whole different level of unsupervised individuals who may decide that they want to engage in a life that's illegal as relates to the public safety of our city. I know that's not totally your jurisdiction, but I'm just thinking in terms of how the system works, right? And I know from a probation and parole standpoint, it's either intense, one-on-one, taking urines, but also separate from taking urines, the support systems that Councilwoman Jamie Gardier is referring to as well could be provided to an individual in a much more robust manner. But I do recognize we're in COVID-19. You probably couldn't answer this question, but I'll still put it out there anyway. Is there any movement to do ankle monitoring of individuals because of COVID-19? You can't come in and see your probation or parole officer directly. And also, if a person violates, right now, during COVID-19, let's say they get the phone call at home and they're not there. And because our court system is the way it is, what happens to that individual?
The same thing that would have happened if their COVID was not going on. A warrant is issued and they're picked up. I get a list every morning of every individual who was picked up either for a violation or absconding. It's not as though we're not paying attention. It's not as though we're not doing anything. They are checked by phone, and if they're not there, then it's just as though they did not come in. In terms of electronic monitoring, we're still doing that. We had stopped for a while, mainly because of the inability to social distance. There's a lot involved in the electronic monitoring. A person from the probation department has to go to that person's house where there's family. Before that, the residence has to be okay. There's certain places that landlords do not want that in there. Monitors in their house and their rental properties. So that has to be cleared. Then the probation department has to go out, look at the place and insert the apparatus, place the monitoring on there. And of course, back in March and April, we were all concerned about social distancing and that type of thing. And so, no, we weren't adding those cases, but we found a way to do it. And I guess it was maybe in June or July that we did begin again to do new cases with electronic monitoring. So all of that is being done. So don't get the impression that, it's just a phone contact, and if you're not there, it's okay. No. If you're not there, a warrant is issued, and you're picked up.
Okay. And I'll wrap up on this last statement, and thank you for your very thorough testimony. Before I turn it to Councilman Curtis Jones, and when we talk about over supervising, that's what I heard you say. And I know during this environment, we try to do a balance, right? From the system not being oppressive, but at the same time, making sure that public safety is a priority. And while I'm out on the street talking to mothers and fathers who have lost their loved ones, the conversation has come up on several different occasions that I heard an aunt say, I would rather see my nephew in jail than dead. I would rather see my nephew in jail than dead. I've talked to other young men who said, if it were not for that judge and me doing a little time, I would not have been given the opportunity to change my life. And I just talk about that from a balanced standpoint, because at the end of the day, we have to take public safety as a priority. I understand we're also balancing the rights of individuals because we don't want mass incarceration, but we also know that, I'm never ashamed to use myself being an Ivy League graduate and doing some coursework at Harvard and growing up in South Philly. But if it had not been for Judge Reynolds saying, wait a minute, young man, what do you want to do with your life, right? What do you want to do as it relates to standing on the corner, getting involved in mischief and bringing your neighborhood down? Having not been for him, saying, well, wait a minute, either you're going to count the birds on that ledge, Kurt, or you're going to figure out what you want to do with your life. Having not been for him, in the support system, obviously, of my family, but most importantly, community members. This is where outside support plays a major role. Other people who saw something in myself that I didn't necessarily see in myself at that time, like a Congressman Chaka Fattah or Curtis Jones when I was a young man, or Harold James, to say, listen, you can get involved in something that's positive as opposed to something that's negative. It was that type of support system that Councilwoman Jamie Gaudier is talking about can help a person on probation to get involved in something that's positive. But also, I also say, just because I'm a little on the side of making sure that individuals are held accountable that do not see what we're doing as something that's worthy while we're on this call today, that have to be held accountable and can possibly save their life in the future. So I just wanted to say that just for the record, but I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Curtis Jones.
Well, let me before that, let me just mention, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Having grown up in North Philadelphia, still visit there. I have friends that I grew up with who are in jail. I mean, it's no secret. I mean, I have grown up with people who are doing time, and I'm still in touch with their relatives, and they're saying, look, I'm glad that he's in there, because if he was out here, he would be dead. I mean, they know him, they know his personality, and that type of thing. They file petitions in terms of compassionate release and that type of stuff. But nonetheless, I mean, I agree with you that but for some folks being incarcerated, they would not be with us. And I don't want to speak too far, but it troubles me that we went through great lengths to get a lot of people out of jail during the pandemic. And I'm not sure what effect that has on what we're going through now. I'm waiting on the numbers. But my thought is perhaps there is some correlation of those people that were released. I don't have any proof. And I'm kind of hesitant in saying what I'm saying, but nonetheless, all the noise that was made about let him out, and this is what we have. And at the same time, I got to give good kudos to Commissioner of Prison, because I mean what she did in terms of having stopped the family visit, having the attorneys checked and all of that. The explosion of COVID that everyone anticipated did not happen, thanks to her. And we can say that very proudly. And as a result, I believe there was one individual, unfortunately, out of the 4,900 or so individuals that were in jail in March, that unfortunately passed away. But getting back to what you said, I agree with you. I wish there was so much more that we can do to stop these individuals from killing themselves.
How many individuals you said that were released or murdered?
What do you mean?
I thought I heard you say individuals who were released. There was a certain number of them.
No, I don't have that number.
Sorry.
I'm waiting on that number, okay. and that's my concern. And getting that number.
I think before you say that, you probably want to have the numbers first, because that's kind of assumption.
Well, it is. It is an assumption, and that's why I said
on shooters who just got off the steps and want to get involved in gun violence. Just want to say that just for the record.
Was that a question? I didn't quite understand what you said.
No, I was saying that before you make that blanketed statement, I think it might be best to do it with statistics and say, listen, this is why individuals were on state road, right? These are the charges that they had while they were on state road. When they were released as a result of the advocacy, when people said let them go because of COVID-19, we know that we had this percentage were locked up for guns, this percentage were locked up for drug addiction, this percentage were locked up for retail theft, and we know this percentage of individuals has been either rearrested on gun charges or murdered as well after the fact of them being released. I would just think that if we make that statement, it would probably be best to have some statistics to back it up, because some people will put that statement and say, well, wait a minute. Everyone that been let out under COVID-19 off the state road is a result of the gun violence we're seeing as a result of those individuals coming home. And if that is the case, I would make that statement only in the event that we have data to back it up. I mean,
and that's my point. That's my point. I am not making that statement. I am not making that statement. My point is that there was a substantial amount of people let out, and we are waiting on the data.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I stand corrected. Okay. All right. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first thank you, Judge Tucker, for your leadership in this regard, but also your leadership at CJ. One of the things I found in management is when you bring all stakeholders to the table, you can get quicker results in processing data, that becomes good information, that becomes public policy, by not letting people point the fingers in different directions. And in doing so, whether it was responding to the prison population during COVID, or whether it is dealing with a whole myriad of criminal justice reform issues, I found that that group that you had is at the epicenter of good change. And so thank you for that leadership. I would also then look at challenging us to take that a step further. And what I mean by that, and I've been sounding like a broken record, is that I've been hearing glimmers of hope, glimmers of positivity in different aspects of your hearings, Mr. Chairman. I hear a police commissioner that's not afraid to look in the mirror and see what she can do better with her department. I see a district attorney that's willing to look at his own reflection and processes and say, listen, maybe I need to do a little more of this, a little less of that. I believe the courts are equally willing to do that kind of self-reflection, to say we need to tighten the dials on this and look at what we're doing related to probation and parole. So if that is the feeling, I'd like to challenge us, along with you, Mr. Chairman, to look at the last 100 shooters. I'm gonna beat this like a drum and say, how did these guns get here? Let's reverse engineer and look at that, because I heard a little bit of that today. And how did the shooters get here at the same point in time committing this act? And if we do that, and we don't point fingers, as you said, Your Honor, and say, look, maybe we can do this a little better in the future. And for us in City Council to take responsibility too. When you talk about some of the things you observed, Your Honor, I never forget that we had a hearing on a matter dealing with the water department. The water department was incensed about an action this council was about to take. So they brought their membership to council. I looked back behind me, Member Gardier, and I saw Pookie, who I went to school with, who was voted most likely to get a gun, working for the water department. I saw Ray, who had been the scourge of my neighborhood, coming up like he was the guy you walked on the other side of the street from. Even if you knew him, you walked on the other side. But these individuals had a job. They were now responsible members of society, baseball coaches, football coaches, contributing to their block. And the difference between who they were, who they could have been, was a job. So we have a responsibility to create those pathways out. So we can't just go into your courtroom and say, you know what, irrespective of how you feed yourself and your family, put that gun down and, that's what's going to happen. We have to provide answers to the complexity of the problem. So what I'm saying is that as a result of your hearings, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to narrow down to cases, because I heard a willing set of stakeholders to look at a case study that says, here's 100 guns, here's 100 shootings, here's 100 trigger pullers. How did we get here? And if we can do that and reverse engineer solutions, I think that that's a better approach to just, I can't hear thoughts and prayers no more. I'm done with, after we get finished praying and get up off our knees, we have to do some work. And I think this is the level to which we have to do. And thank you, Member Gardier, for almost being like Paul Revere and saying to the mayor and the administration, like, this is risen to a crisis level that we can no longer ignore, and the British aren't coming, they're already here. And we have to deal with this in that kind of magnitude. So at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking that Judge Tucker participate in that smaller group so that we can kind of peel the layers away of the onion to get to the core of the problem. And if you would be willing to do that, Judge Tucker.
I am. Again, it's not only as part of CJAB, but as the supervising judge of the criminal section of the trial division. Again, it concerns me. Every Wednesday, I get these numbers, and all I can do is shake my head now. We had started a program, well, not a program, but an initiative to reach out to entertainers, sports stars and whatnot, just with a letter asking them if they would do, some commercial spots or something, just to lend a voice. Those guys out there who are doing the shooting, they're not going to listen to me. And chances are, even in your constituency, the guys that are doing the shooting, they probably won't listen to you. But the people that they listen to are the entertainers, the singers, the football stars, the basketball people, simply to say, hey, what you doing ain't cool. When you and I were growing up, a fair one was a fair one. There isn't any more fair ones. There's drive-bys and stuff like that. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. And so in order for us to get on the same page, we have to find the page. Right now, I mean, folks think they're on the same page, and they may be on the same page, but it's a different book. I mean, when we're talking about individuals who have propensity just to drive down the street and shoot into a crowd, how do you reach that person? What's in their mind? Are we talking about the lyrics in the song that they're listening to over and over again, or are we talking about something else? And that's what I'm driving at. If we could find that, and if we could save just one person from getting shot, not killed, just shot, then I think we're on the road to success.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Your Honor, for your testimony. Before we call for public comment, is there any last-minute brief comments, questions from my colleagues before we turn over to public comment? Well, first and foremost, I want to personally, again, thank you, Judge Tucker, for your patience. Thank you for your commitment. And most importantly, thank you for your sincerity and your passion. It definitely shows as it relates to your testimony. I've known you for years as a young public servant, getting involved in politics. I know the work that you have done mentoring. I call him the great Kevin Harden.
Okay.
And the work that he's doing. And that's an example of you not only on walking the walk, but doing the talk. Mentoring another young man who come from a similar background like myself, and giving them an opportunity to change their lives and follow their goals and their dreams and their aspirations. And when you talk about what's in a young person's mind that will make them pull the trigger, right? I wouldn't say I would know, but I believe when you have mentors, when you have people that show that they care, when we have opportunities to point our young people in the right direction, I know there's a lot of trauma going on in our community right now, so hurt people. I know there's a lot of revenge killings that are taking place because young people don't know how to process when they're losing what they consider a loved one, which is their friend. A lot of these young relationships with our young people start off in kindergarten and goes to high school. When you lose that loved one, you may decide to process it in a way that is devastating to our community. And so I'm a one that believes that it takes a collaborative effort, all hands on deck. But I will call and say that we do have to have a level of urgency in how we address this issue, because again, we do know when we talk about the issue of Black Lives Matter, we talk about the issue of institutional racism and systematic racism. We have to begin looking at how we are distributing our resources, our manpower, to address this very critical issue that's pretty much could very well decimate another generation of young people before they even get a chance to get older. So thank you, Your Honor, and we shall be in touch regarding following up regarding Councilman Curtis Jones' request and working with our agents, law enforcement agencies, and criminal justice partners regarding those 100 individuals who are carrying guns from start to finish. Thank you very much. And at this particular time, we're going to take a break so we can go into public comment, and I'm going to turn everything over to Modesto to cue us up.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you, Council Chair. Now we're going to take a few minutes just to get the participants for public comment into our session. Council Chair, give me 1 second. We just have to make sure that Channel 64 is live before we get started. Thank you. Council Chair, we are now live.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for participating in a special committee on gun violence. I want to ask for the clerk to please call the first witness.
Reverend Gregory Holston.
Reverend Holston, please state your name for the record and you can begin. Reverend Holston. Can the clerk please call the next witness?
Mr. Chair, you may want to remind the public commenters to press *6 to unmute their phones.
I think you just did. Thank you very much.
Next witness is Queen Judith Robinson.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm here to testify on 170609. Hope you all can hear me well. Hello? Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ms. Robinson.
Okay, thank you. So Queen Judith Robinson here, testifying on 170609, the Special Committee on Gun Violence. And I understand that now, after so much violence and murder and mayhem, unfortunately, in our community, you now want a task force. With all due respect, my head is spinning after hearing last week's testimony. I'm going to first say this because this is what we want in North Philadelphia, is prevention. Prevention is the key, because once we find that we have some of this madness that we have in our community, then to try to get heads or tails or some kind of clarity, you have the police saying one thing, and then our DA saying another thing, and then the case can't get to be packaged properly, and it goes to the judge or a jury, and then we got criminals back on our street. If we don't know what's going on the streets, what the hell are we supposed to do, who are trying our best to get clarity so we can be clean and smart and healthy about what's going on? So I'm going to just scream, prevention is the key. That's what we want. We want to start early to try to prevent what's going on, because we want to also ask for tracing of the firearms. Thank you for writing the letter to the ATF, and I would love to please make it public what your results are, because it's no way in hell that we should accept what's going on in our towns. When we see a surveillance tape of what's going on, this is just something's wrong here, where humans are killing each other like Manchurian candidates. Like we under some spell or something. There's black men, and now they're spilling their bullets all over our community, killing women and children. Come on, you all. Come on. We're listening here. And I want to say, that old statement, lies, lies, and damn statistics, because it's not making any sense. For instance, here in North Philly, we have 4 law enforcement. So we're asking the question, are we being over-policed? We got PHA, and I want to focus just briefly on them for a minute. A lot of horrible crimes are going on. Can we pull them into this discussion and hear what is their action plan, to deal with what we see here going on in their developments? We have PHA, we have Temple Police, we have SEPTA Police, and then we have a bunch of security forces, all in the heart of North Philadelphia in a short distance, okay, in the 22nd District. And then we can't, no arrests, no suspects, no arrests. Well, look, trace the guns when you can.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. This, I can't wait until we get back to in person, because this Zoom and this technology, I hope that I'm on record for everything I've said, because I want to make sure that you're clear that, it's not making any sense to the average citizen, that we're not coming up with a better agenda and a direction than we have. A task force at this late date, please don't put the usual, the same folk on. I've been hearing people with a lot of experience, but you're still telling me we can't figure it out by the time these cases are presented. I was totally taken aback and quite surprised that supposedly, according to the DA statistics, these are not repeat offenders. These are not people known to law enforcement. I know the police are saying some other things. I would tend to agree with them. But how on earth could those statistics be correct when, then if they are correct, let's say they are correct, then how on earth, who are these people that now, who are these new perpetrators? Who are these people? So with that, I'm going to just beg for prevention in North Central, and then, I know you all cutting up based on divisions and police district doing one thing here and one thing there. We want prevention all around. We got 5 law enforcement agencies in North Philly. We want to trace those firearms and any crime that happens where a firearm is obtained, and then all of those firearms that they're collecting, let's trace them and then publicize that information for the public. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to let someone else speak. But trace those firearms. That's what we want to add to that ATF letter. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Queen Judith Robinson, and just wanted to state for the record that the sole focus of this hearing over the last 2 days was specifically around where are the guns coming from, the illegal trafficking of guns in the city of Philadelphia, how people are arrested who are carrying and using guns, as well as how people are prosecuted. And we have also made sure that the tracking and the tracing of guns were a part of the letter to alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. We did receive a preliminary response from them. However, we're still waiting for a comprehensive investigative report on gun crimes here in the city of Philadelphia. But thank you very much, Peter Robinson, for always being passionate and on the front line. At this particular time, I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the next witness.
Reverend Gregory Holston.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Gregory Holston, and I am the senior pastor of James Memorial United Methodist Church and a member of Black Clergy of Philadelphia, as well as other community organizations. What I want to do is really just encourage and want to celebrate the sense of cooperation that appears to be happening because of all of this emergency that we're in. I am thankful that council, DA, police are all having a sense of the Attorney General's office and the judges are all having a sense of the need to work together. Black Clergy wants to encourage that as much as it possibly can and is holding our Gun Violence Summit next Tuesday and wants to make sure we invite all of the parties to be present as we continue this spirit of cooperation. We believe clearly that clergy and spiritual leaders have a role to play in dealing with this gun violence that's going on, and we want to be active in that participation. So I just want to again thank you and looking forward to working with everyone now in a really cooperative way to fight against this terrible epidemic that is going on in our city. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, should I call the next witness?
Council Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. Can the clerk please call the next witness?
Jelani Hadi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Yes, hi. My name is Jelani Hadi, and I wear a lot of different hats in the community. Activism, hacks, community organizing. Councilman Kenyatta, you and I have marched side by side together at different rallies, at different protests. I'm not heavy in the community, but I am in the community, and I have been working with different mentor groups like Man Up PHL and other groups, and working with different organizations to address, to look at the issues of gun violence in the community. I may not specifically have. I know you all are talking about a specific bill. I can't speak on the specific bill that you all are talking about right now. over the last 2 days. But I wanted to present a what I think will be a solution to the reduction of gun violence in the community. I feel that I feel that one of the ways that we can reduce gun violence in the city of Philadelphia is to have every city council person, not just the city council people that are on this committee, but every city council person hold or have a anti-gun violence march/rally. Now I know Cheryl Parker. I know she has some. Councilman Kenyatta, I know you have some as well. But regardless of whether a city council person's district sees gun violence or not, I feel that every city council person and city council has to have or has to put together some type of gun violence march/rally or some type of gun violence initiative. So much, not only that, right? I feel like it has to be in order for, and I'm gonna go as far as to say that if someone would like to hold an elected position in city council, then it will be mandatory for them to present some type of anti-gun violence initiative or anti-gun violence. I'm going to say initiative. It will be like, in other words, in your job interview and if you're running for city council and your job interview, you have to put together an anti-gun violence initiative for the city of Philadelphia, right? In order for any person, that wants to be in city council and hold an elected position in city council, I feel like that one of the job requirements is that they have to put together some type of anti-gun violence initiative or march/rally. I think that, there are other issues, that are on the table, like poverty and homelessness and food and things of that nature. But, given the seriousness and the emotional impact that gun violence has had or is having on the city of Philadelphia, I feel like it needs to take a priority over all the other issues that are impacting the city. And I just feel like, if just maybe starting there will be a good start. This is my first time actually speaking on city council, so I'm a little nervous. But that would be a solution, that I would have to gun violence in the community. So, and Councilman Kenyatta, maybe you can elaborate more on other city councilmen who have been, putting together or having, anti-gun violence marches/rallies. But those are my thoughts.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being here today. I want to acknowledge Councilman Isaiah Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just wanted to take a minute to thank that young man for his passionate testimony. I can only imagine how nervous he is testifying to us about an issue that's so important. So first of all, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate his ideas, as well as the fact that we do want to make sure that we are thinking about as many anti-gun violence initiatives as possible. I know that Councilman Johnson has been a part of a number of rallies. I know council members have. I can't speak for everybody else, but just take a minute to give a shout out to a lot of the young people who've been leading the anti-gun rallies, anti-gun violence rallies across the city of Philadelphia. And I think a lot of us, we've been more or less participating in their events and trying to support them through our initiative. So I didn't catch the young man's name, but I would love to hear more from him if he has any ideas or suggestions or initiatives that we should support him. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And while I have the mic, I just want to thank you for just convening this conversation in general. I know that it hasn't gone exactly according to schedule, but the content that I've received and the information that's been provided is invaluable to me. And I think I'm hoping that it helps me and my colleagues, as well as the constituents across the city, be more effective as we continue to fight not just the coronavirus pandemic, but this gun violence pandemic as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Jihad Halani is the young man's name. We can get you his information. And Jihad, we also just want to acknowledge, and I speak pretty much for my colleagues. I know the hard work, and I know how dedicated they are around this issue. Councilwoman Jamie Gardier will be introducing a resolution calling on the city of Philadelphia to make this issue a key priority, making it a state of emergency, where the same way we're addressing the opioid crisis, the same way we're addressing COVID-19, we should be addressing the issue of gun violence here in the city of Philadelphia. And so just so you know, we're all working in cahoots together in partnership to figure this thing out, because we know at the end of the day, we can't continue to live in a city where our young people are dying and we aren't working with a sense of urgency and aggressiveness as it relates to the issue of gun violence. And so, young man, you keep up the good work. You keep showing up. And we appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule for being on this call.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Will the clerk please call the next witness?
Malik Salahuddin.
Malik, are you there? Will the clerk please call the next witness?
That's the last witness, Councilman. It does appear that someone was trying to speak, but may have been on mute.
Are there any other comments or questions from members of City Council? So, with hearing none, there will be no further questions from members of the committee and no other witnesses to testify. I will ask if there is anyone else present in this hearing whose name we have failed to call and that wishes to offer testimony on any of the bills being considered today. Hearing none, I want to thank all the witnesses for their participation today. I now invite all panels and witnesses to please disconnect from the meeting before the hearing concludes. This concludes the before the Special Committee on Gun Violence, and what I will do for my colleagues, we will do a summary of these last set of hearings that we've had around the issue of gun violence, and then we will follow up regarding what some key recommendations are in terms of moving forward. And I thank all of my colleagues for your dedication, your commitment, and most importantly, your passion around this issue and your patience over these last couple of weeks around getting to the bottom of this issue. This will not be the last hearing that we will have. I just want to also just acknowledge that when we have these meetings and we have these hearings, it's also about transparency and accountability. And I do know for a fact that by having these hearings, by bringing all the stakeholders to the table, by making sure that we're working again with a level of transparency and accountability, it puts all individuals, including ourselves as elected officials, on the front line when it comes to making sure we're doing everything that's possible in addressing these issues. And most important, so the public can see where their gaps are, what we aren't doing, what we should be doing, and how we can improve upon addressing this issue of gun violence. And so, I thank everyone for their dedication. With that being said, this concludes the special committee on gun violence. Thank you very much. Be safe, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.